Well, hello there, folks. Jack Spirko here with Miyagi Mornings, episode 124. And today we're going to do some self-examination and some real-world looking at the concept of building communities and groups. And as I do this, I need to be very clear the type of community I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a Facebook group or a MeWe group or a float group or some kind of virtual community. Nothing wrong with that. I love those communities, and they can be incredibly valuable, but it's not... Though a lot of it will apply, this is not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the almost unicorn fantasy that some people seem to have of this idea of like this prepper group that's going to be the kind of prepper group you might read about in some sort of prepper porn novel or something, a la James Wesley Rawls or something, where you're going to have this group of people that all come together. They're going to have their guns, their beans, their bullets, their band-aids, and they're going to stand during the collapse of society and fight off everybody. And no, it's not a thing. It only exists in fiction literature for a reason. It's never been a thing. And in the places where nations have been invaded and taken over, like when we do it in Afghanistan, that's not how it works. If it doesn't work there with those people who will suffer in ways the average American cannot even conceive of, let alone be willing to do, it ain't going to happen here. There's no little prepper group over in Afghanistan of a bunch of Taliban all banded together and living off of some little remote compound. Doesn't happen. However, you can get through a lot of hard times much easier, and you can have a better life right now building a group sort of like this. But today's question for you is, what value do you offer such a group? And let me be clear, being a nice guy that everybody thinks is kind of cool is not a lot of value. Having a really big collection of AR-15s is probably not a lot of value to the majority of things people will need to get through. See, what people mean when they say this, and this is the glorious ideal that's spouted, and I think it's a good ideal to shoot for, understanding you will always fall short of it. In many religions, there is this kind of like, this is the ideal. This is what you always need to shoot for. You will always fall short, therefore the grace of God, right? That type of thing. But yet you keep shooting for it, but you accept that you will not fulfill it. And boy, I'll tell you, religion's one thing, but when it comes to this world, this corporeal world that we live in, having this fantasy about this type of a society being able to be built to the point where it doesn't need anybody else is dangerous, because it leads to complacency, which leads to not improving your value, which leads to a weak group if you even hold one together. Because let me be very clear about this utopian idea of we'll just have all our groups and we'll all exchange with each other and we'll piss off for the rest of the world. I'm all for the rest of the world pissing off. I rely on them as little as possible. I've set my life up so that when we went through this COVID shit over the last year and a half, my life didn't change jack diddly crap. Right? But I still relied on outside services and outside people. And you're going to have to. Because there are nation states that want to be self-sufficient and cannot be. Think about that. You have entire nations, entire national treasuries. They cannot exist without global commerce. And you and Billy Bob and Billy Roy and a couple of good old boys from down the pub and their wives and girlfriends and second girlfriends and some cousins that might be girlfriends, y'all are going to go get a farm somewhere, and you're going to do it when a nation can't. You know, we have a word to describe that type of belief system. It's delusional. Even the dadgone Native American tribes, and I'm specifically speaking of the more northern tribes that were less civilization-oriented, unlike the tribes in the southwestern United States and Mexico and Central and South America. Even those tribes that were more nomadic and wanders, they had commerce within tribes and other tribes. Because it's necessary to not just live a life where you can survive, but have the things that you really want and some of the things that you actually need. Are you going to start manufacturing your own penicillin? No? Okay, then, well, I do with herbs. Not, you know what? There was a time when people were way more savvy with herbs, and people died like shit of the bubonic plague, and penicillin made that not a thing anymore. Do you feel what I'm saying here? And you're going to say, but I can have like all this stuff stored up. Okay, that's not self-sufficient, that's self-reliance, because over time, self-reliance wanes as you cannot replace things. Self-reliance we measure in time, Got it? Self-sufficiency would be measured in percentage. Self-sufficiency means I'm pretty much indefinitely capable of surviving or having what I need without stuff from the outside. Now, if you could build a community that got up to even 30 to 40% self-sufficiency, meaning that everything being used that are for, at least for needs and basic wants, 30 to 40% of that came out of the community, you would hit a home run. I've not yet met one that's that stable, but boy, that would be great. And I think that's doable with the right mindset. The right mindset is we're not going to get there. And answering the question, what value do you offer? People get upset sometimes when I'll ask a question like that. I'm like, you understand if you're going to be part of a real group that's actually really going to do this shit, that whether they directly ask you that or not, you're going to have to be able to answer it. And I think a lot of people have value and they don't even know what it is. But let's make it abundantly clear. Let's take something, because I want you to understand the need to work in the group and outside the group. Let's think about if we had a large prepper group, 20 families. They don't live on a compound, but they all live close enough to all do business with and exchange from each other. We got farmers, we got people that can do all kinds of things. We got a guy that's a member of this community that owns a welding shop. Not hard to see the value that he offers, right? Okay, he can make just about anything that anybody's going to need out of scrap metal. Well, right away, you might think that somebody that can acquire scrap metal cheaply that's highly valuable to fabrication might also have value there and could then bring that material to him. And then when you needed something made, there'd be both the material and the capability to make it. And do you know how long that man will be able to pay for his welding shop, the material and overhead in it, if he's only selling to you and your 20 families? About 35 freaking seconds. Nobody's going to buy enough shit off of a welding shop that 20 families can support it. So he's going to have to sell to everybody else and also be part of that community. And then you know what that community should be saying to themselves? Well, since Bill's Welding is part of our inner cadre community, then Bill's Welding success is important to us. And anytime they need anything done, even if Bill is more expensive, guess where they need to take their happy asses? Over to Bill's. This starts to answer the question of what value do you have? Well, one of my values is loyalty to members of the community and their services and their products. I'm not going to go out and buy it when I don't need it, but when I need it, I'm going to buy from them first as long as they can fulfill that obligation. But then we need to all be Bill's freaking sales force. We need to tell everybody we know, if you ever need metal fabrication or welding done, call Bill. Here's his business card. Like we're a damn lead list. Now we're actually providing marketing and value to Bill so that Bill will be there when we need him. And somebody might actually figure out, hey, I would like to have a business offering tools to society. Tools that don't exist. Maybe some really cool shit for gardening. Now, if you go to Bill and make a wholesale deal with him and he's making you some kind of badass garden trowel or something like that, great. And if you sell to everybody in that community, all 20 families buy 2, you sold 40, great. You can pay your bills for 3 days. Yay. So how do you provide value to the group and continue to be there? And that is that you then begin to sell those out to the wider market. You create an export business. So export businesses export product, and what do they import? Money. And what does money do? It expands resource acquisition capability. So now we have the welding shop working with somebody that's a good marketer, and maybe that marketer's not even the kind of guy that really wants to pack and ship, but maybe Bill has this big ass fabrication facility, and they're already packing and shipping things outside of the general area anyway, where people have large orders and things like that. So then they can create a partnership where Ricky does the marketing of this product line, but they do all the fulfillment. We call that drop shipping, except we're not drop shipping from freaking Hong Kong. We're drop shipping from a mile down the road. What value do you bring? I grow tomatoes. Do you grow enough tomatoes for everybody in your neighborhood? No? Okay, then you have limited value with your garden. Your actual value to your group, if you grow tomatoes and peppers and stuff like that, and you're not really doing it as a market farmer, is that you won't be a drain on the food resources as much because you have your own food. How are you paying for the material to do that? You probably have something you're selling outside the community. So we need to be looking at answering this question two ways. What do I offer my community, and how am I a stable member of that community by what I offer to the wider world? That don't have to be entrepreneurial, but if there's no entrepreneurial component to it, and we have, a global pandemic hit, and you lose your job, and maybe they don't throw you an extra $300 a week on top of your unemployment this time, because they can't, because it's a much bigger problem, or some other thing hits like that, how are you going to continue to provide value to the group? And that's not judgmental from me to you. That's something for you to judge yourself with and start saying to yourself, self, I need to provide more value. And this is why it's a win-win scenario for you. If you do this and you go out with the concept of building a community like this, you will have more capability to build a community like this. Because I'll tell you what's not real valuable in a community of this size, and they are going to be limited in size. There ain't a lot of room for bureaucrats and politicians. We don't need those. We have enough of those in the whole wide world. So you need to have something concrete that you can do. Maybe you're a great teacher, and by being a great teacher you can teach skills to your community, but you teach skills to the wider world, and you're exporting knowledge and importing money, and money pays for resources that go within the community and build strength by reinvesting in your own backyard, your neighbor's backyard, and the coalition of the willing that you have there. You see how that all works. Now let's say that we come out of this global bullshit and things go back to kind of sort of the way they were before it, and you go back about your honky-dory happy little life, and you don't ever really need those people in hard times. Well, you still have them, and you're going to be a happier person with access to more things, and you're going to have more value, and because you have more value, you have more ability to do what? To export service and or product and import money. And you import money to where? Your household, which you're now running like a business, and you're running like a business that is interoperable with multiple other community businesses. If you cannot answer this question, and if you're not building a community based on this concept where everybody in the community understands the value that they bring and is always seeking to increase that value, you are not going to build a community like you want to build. You're not going to build a stable community. You're not going to build a community that has staying power. Now, there are some communities out there, some groups that have been put together sort of haphazardly that work. They didn't come at it with this philosophy, but I'm going to tell you what would happen. If you said you got this group and said, well, who's part of this community? First of all, anybody in it probably knows everybody in it that's really in it. There might be some peripheral people that think they're in it and they're not. That happens all the time. But like the core, the real people in it, you're going to go to any single person in that community. You're going to say, who's in it? And I know they probably don't want to tell you, but if they were willing to tell you, they'd say, Bill, Tom, Fred, Mary, Sue, Nicole, whatever, right? And then you would say, well, what value does Bill bring to your community? And they will spit out a freaking answer. Bill might not even realize how valuable this community, but the community knows. And then it works. So if it works when it's done unconsciously, because it naturally flows, we have the innate genetic predisposition to build and maintain and grow relationships when those relationships offer mutual value. That is how every tribe, civilization, town, community that started from nothing formed. And then the bureaucrats take over, it gets too big, and it all gets screwed up. But these tight-knit groups always come from Bill does this, Tom does this, Sherry does that, Nicole can do this. And that doesn't mean that when somebody gets old or tired and can't do as much anymore that we discard them. No, the fact that they invested in it makes them worthy of being cared for as they age. This is how I grew up in Pennsylvania. This is why, as a kid, my grandmother at harvest time in the garden, when we had more than she could bear to can, would pack up bags, write family names on them, and I'd go take them and give them away. And you know what they all went to? They all went to people that were such senior citizens and didn't have kids living at home anymore, that they had no time, no ability, no capability to produce their own food. And so they were kind of living on that fixed income. And my grandmother knew that 2 bags of maybe old Lady Catchmer couldn't grow a garden anymore. But if I brought her 2 bags of food, she could still can it. And that would help her get through winter. And nobody told my grandmother that that's how this was supposed to work, but it worked naturally. So my point to you is, if you focus on it, if you grow it and you develop it, there is no downside to increasing your value every day just a little bit. And if you increase your value to others by 1% a week and compound that over a decade, the results are phenomenal. And if you go at the idea of building community based on this philosophy, since it works naturally all by itself, imagine how powerful it is when you intend it, when you will it, and when you commit to it, and when others that are part of it do the same. With that, hope you guys enjoyed this week of Miyagi Mornings. I will catch up with you next week with another 4 videos next week. And remember, you can get all of these segments, the Miyagi Morning segments, on Friday mornings. We drop the recap podcast episode, audio only. And those of you that have just found me and are like, oh, this guy's a podcaster, this is his podcast. This is not my podcast. This is a short video. I do 4 new podcasts a week and 1 that's a recap of these episodes. And they are available in audio format in all of the syndication services. You can find me just by searching for the Survival Podcast.